Paper Girls, presented by Lisa Sosa and Emily Gonzalez.
For our presentation, we'll be discussing how Paper Girls by Brian K. Vaughan could be considered as an American novel despite being a graphic novel, because the story involves feminism, diversity, and growth in adolescence, which are all issues we deal with in our present-day American culture.
Paper Girls opens with one of four main characters, Erin Tang, dreaming of meeting deceased astronaut Krista McCullough. The dream takes a dark turn with a demented monster in a spacesuit yelling about the Tree of Knowledge. After Erin wakes up, she prepares her paper route. It's November 1st, 1988, the day after Halloween. On her route, she's harassed by a teenage boy in a Freddy Krueger costume. Before he and his buddies bully her further, Matt, Tiffany, and KJ show up, the other Paper Girls. They eventually end up in a house that has a time machine, and from here, the adventure begins. They find ninja-esque vigilantes, flying dinosaurs, members named the Old Timers, dressed in suits of armor, and liberal teenagers from the future named Heck and Naldo, who die saving Erin. By the end of this first novel, they are transported to the year 2016 after Erin touches an eye thing, and they meet future Erin. Our girls, except KJ, are now in 2016 with flat-screen TVs, iPhones, and defunct shopping malls. A theme that appears to begin is the end of the world. This issue is replete with smart cars, bottled water, and other current present-day 21st century comforts. As they begin their quest to find a way home and what the heck is going on, they run into slug monsters, terms like the first folding, and they search for KJ, and they meet clone Erin from the future. Both Erins attempt to come to terms with who they become. Life is sort of a disappointment for both of them, and we learn that Mac eventually dies from leukemia. Another theme that comes up is changing the past, which isn't a surprise when the story involves time travel. Also, there are hints of creator Brian K. Vaughan's other show, Lost, which he produced and wrote for. Specifically, one of the girls states, "When are we?" as opposed to "Where are we?", which was a reference to the show. By the end of Volume 2, old Erin and her sister Missy take the girls to the folding so that they can jump through and try to get home. However, they don't end up back in 1988, but they do find KJ. Volume 3 finds our girls in prehistoric times. Once again, the theme of trying to change the future and the past addresses this installment. After Erin, Tiffany, and Mac find KJ, they run into a woman who speaks a different language than they do. But this necklace thing that they took from clone Erin helps them to understand her. Her name is Wari, and she and her baby, Japo, are trying to hide from Japo's 3 fathers. Dr. Quanta Bronstein makes an appearance in this volume. She is the woman who invented time travel. She realizes she's trying to play God when Japo's fathers kidnap her in their search for Japo. The girls try and rescue Dr. Bronstein from the evil men before they stab her in the back, and the girls race to her time machine. But it turns into a weird ball of light and transports them to the year 2000. This volume also addresses homosexuality. Specifically, KJ sees a future in which she kisses Mac. Volume 4. The Paper Girls continue the quest to find their way back home. This time they are in the year 2000, just after New Year's Eve. The Y2K millennium bug that stressed out a nation is what begins this issue. The girls seek out comic strip writer Charlotte S., who thinks they are time travelers, and tells them that it's the battle of the ages, the old-timers versus the futurists. Once again, the foldings is mentioned again, which is a way for the girls to get to and from each dimension. This issue is full of futuristic robots, more 80s references, and future Tiffany, who married someone that looks like a cross between Brandon Lee and Chris Angel. This issue is all about Armageddon, the end of times, just like in episode 2, where the same stuff was being talked about. As the girls continue to figure out what the heck is going on, they end up being transported again through a futuristic robot, kind of like the Terminator. Volume 5. This whole time they've been trying to stay away from a futuristic man called Grandfather, who looks just like a regular man, but everyone listens to him like he's God. We learned that the girls were transported to the year 2171. Wari and Japo are in this time, and they are at odds with each other. Japo keeps looking for the young invaders. Mac and KJ take off to find a doctor that can perhaps cure the cancer she will eventually die from, while both Tiffany's and Erin search for and find older Wari, and learn that Erin has made a map on how to get back to 1988. As the girls follow Erin's map, they end up at the top of a tower and face clone Erin. She just wants to kill the girls because she wants all the fighting to end, and as her timer goes off in hopes to eliminate the girls, surprise, surprise, they all 4 get transported to 4 different time periods. To be continued. To understand the historical and theoretical context, we go to Understanding Comics by Scott McCloud. There are several aspects that he mentions. The ability to focus our attention on an idea, the imagery of a cartoon is essential to the graphic novel's relevance. What we see between spaces, which we connect by closure, i.e. space between panels. The graphic novel as art, they tell a story. Color is powerful because it forces us to take note of what we are observing. It causes us to focus on a particular detail. Also, comics are important because they reveal something about each of us that no one else can understand.
As for the historical context of Paper Girls as a graphic novel, artist Cliff Chiang wanted his characters to emulate the types of girls he grew up with as a 12-year-old boy. He and Vaughn wanted to write the youthful adolescent characters as they would have been in the 20th century. For the topics in the comic, the creators of Paper Girls didn't want to sugarcoat the historical aspects of the 80s. They believed that there was a lot more to the decade than how people see it now with rose-colored glasses. They wanted to be true to the times whether the language or actions were horrifying to read or not. Despite criticism towards the genre of graphic novels, Vaughn knew that he wanted his story to be of that nature because there are some things that comics do really well that other mediums can't. Feminism and women empowerment is a huge theme in Paper Girls as it is an issue in our country today. In an interview with the Los Angeles Times, the news outlet asked Vaughn why he thought of writing a graphic novel with all female protagonists. They inquired that people wouldn't quite get the idea of Paper Girls, however, if the title of the comic had been Paper Boys, an audience would have immediately recognized a portion of the premise of the novel. In response, Vaughn states that he has always wanted to write a story involving an all-female group because it's typical in literature for a female protagonist to be defined by the boy they're chasing or the relationship they've just gotten out of. He wanted his audience to forget about the opposite sex because boys don't define their life. As Vaughn wrote the story and dialogue of Paper Girls and asked Chiang to illustrate the characters, they both went in with the intention of having a super diverse cast, knowing that they wanted to reflect the world we live in now. Chiang stated that he wanted each girl to have their own look and have them as clearly recognizable as they would have back in 1988. Erin's rocking the classic teased Asian perm and the black and white clothes a lot of us Asian Americans favored then, says Chiang. Vaughn depicts KJ as a confident jock, however, Chiang didn't want to draw her as a stereotypical athlete with a baseball bat and cap. Their personalities needed to shine through and be easily seen in illustrations, especially acknowledging diversity because there isn't enough of that in graphic novels or in the culture that we live in today. Vaughn told the Los Angeles Times that as he was writing and creating Paper Girls, he imagined and remembered himself being 12 years old and what he would have wanted to see in a graphic novel, as he was living in that time period at that age. In a scholarly article concerning the depictions of childhood in Paper Girls, researchers discussed that the graphic novel doesn't seem to focus on the typical loss of innocence and entry to adulthood theme. Within the plot, the creators focus on fully realized child characters dealing with discomfort arising from complicated issues. Because the girls are dealing with real social, cultural, and political issues, the novel gives a different and fresh insight to how kids in our culture 40 years ago, flashing forward to our time today, would have reacted and learned to adapt under their own circumstances. Thank you for listening, and we hope you enjoyed our presentation.